Hey, thanks for joining us today. And for the sake of the argument, we had Kyle Blomquist, who is running for the 1st Congressional District, which is the largest district in the state of Michigan. And it is the UP and the top third, I think, of the Lower Peninsula. And I said to him, it was amazing. He was the first guest I had that actually delineated ideas about how to attack some problems like affordable housing. He has real ideas. So that was interesting and inspiring. And I also am very proud of myself because I drank sparkling water today and I didn't burp. So that's a big thing. But please follow us for the sake of the argument on all social media platforms. And I'll see you next time. Kyle Blomquist, thank you. Did I say that right?
Yeah.
Blomquist?
Yeah.
Quist?
Blomquist.
Blomquist.
Yeah.
You are here on For the Sake of the Argument, and I appreciate that. And I'm sorry I was late today.
Oh, you're fine.
But you're running for Michigan's 1st Congressional District, which you're going to tell us what that encompasses, but it's very rural.
Yes.
And very red.
Yeah, it's a plus 20 red district until we prove it otherwise, right? So
Did you say 20 plus?
Yeah. Yeah.
Holy cow.
Well, and I think what it is I think when you hear that, you think that is like a deeply ingrained thing, right? And when the reality is that as recently as 2010, which maybe it seems recent to me because I'm getting up there, I'm 40 years old, right?
Oh, God forbid.
Yeah, God forbid. But that was held by Bart Stupak for a long time. And so it was a blue seat for a long, long time. And then I think what has happened is that the Democratic Party has abandoned so many of these rural districts, and I think Michigan's 1st is one of those. Michigan's 1st, for those that don't know, is the entirety of the Upper Peninsula and about the top third of the Lower Peninsula. So it's about 44% of Michigan. It's a massive, massive district. I think it's 2nd largest district east of the Mississippi. And so,
wow, and the 1st largest in Michigan.
Yeah.
So tell me the top of the mitten, what would we know? Name some cities there.
Traverse City.
Holy cow. Okay, Traverse City.
So Traverse City's in there, Petoskey, all of those burgs, but then it's the entirety of the Upper Peninsula. I'm from the Upper Peninsula. I'm from Iron Mountain. It's over on the Wisconsin border. And so many of the things that are experienced in northern lower or the entirety of the Lower Peninsula, or hell, the country in general, is so much more acute in places like the Upper Peninsula because it's so rural. The distance is such a challenge in every single thing that you do. And
sometimes you're abandoned and people don't remember you, probably in either party.
Well, and I think that there's a general feeling of that isolation in Upers in particular, people from the Upper Peninsula. This feeling that your tax dollars go down to Lansing or they go to Washington and they never really make their way back to you. Right. And so it creates this dichotomy where you feel that those forces of government, those seats of power, are actually antagonists to you and your neighbors. And I think that plays into some of the partisanship and some of the ingrained feelings of people in the Upper Peninsula in northern Michigan.
So people up north and in the UP probably have the same needs and desires and wants for a good life that all of us do, of course. What made you decide to run in a 20% red district?
Because I feel that partisanship is the biggest hurdle that we have to overcome. And I feel that too often what the Democratic Party does in rural red districts like ours is they say our goal should then be to moderate ourselves to obscurity. We should have the distance and have the distance and have the distance between us and the Republican position to the point where we're not really saying anything meaningful. We're not providing any stakes to this election. But then what we're trying to do is we're trying to win a race by attacking the other on strictly partisan grounds. And I've seen our rural healthcare system crumbling under its own weight my entire life, that we've seen hospital systems reduce services or close outright. We've seen the distance between us and our care grow and grow and grow, and we're not seeing anybody proposing any solutions that are going to actually help that.
No, especially the women's health centers, they're gone.
No, we lost our last Planned Parenthood in Marquette recently, and when you're in the Upper Peninsula in particular, you're surrounded by two things. You're surrounded by Great Lakes and the Wisconsin line. And what the Wisconsin line means to most of the people in the Upper Peninsula is that's the edge of your healthcare network, right? So
Yeah.
even though you have specialized care, you have quality care, they're as close as Green Bay, 2 hours away from Iron Mountain. You can't get to it without doubling your family maximum out of pocket.
Wow. Yeah, that is a problem. So if you make it to the general, if you win your primary, you're going to have to beat the Republican who's the incumbent, Jack Bergman.
Yeah.
Jack Bergman has failed a lot of Michiganders.
Yes.
And what's your plan to beat him? How are you going to do that? And what are your top 3 issues if you do?
Yeah, so my entire thesis on this is that the partisanship is the hurdle. That everything else, if you just speak to people like they're adults, like they're your neighbors, rather than the other, rather than they're on team red, I'm on team blue, then I think that's when you're able to cut through the issues. When you tell people sincerely that you want to improve their lives, drastically improve their lives, I'm hopeful and I'm very confident that we're going to be able to cut through that bullshit.
And you don't say bad Republicans.
No, and that's what so many of my Democratic Party counterparts do.
Yeah.
Is they would rather hyperfixate on the partisanship. That
Right.
They would rather defend the Democratic Party brand when I feel complete opposite. When I left high school in 2004, I was a Republican. It was post 9/11. I was in a rural red county. All my friends were Republicans. All my family were Republicans. So I was a Republican. Many people inherit a partisan identity.
Correct.
And then they go around and they do their best to try to understand what that partisan identity means from a policy perspective. And after a while, when you start to dissect that and you start to see how those partisan promises, those ideologies are not bore out in our policy, you start to become distrustful of that partisan system. And so when I jettisoned being a Republican, I wasn't rushing to pick up a new moniker. I wasn't rushing to become a Democrat.
A new allegiance.
Right. And so even though I'm seeking the Democratic Party nomination, I never identified as a Democrat.
Interesting.
Yeah. So, and I think that is what we need in our politics right now, because my principal position is that no label, no partisan language or partisan title is going to be more important to me than my neighbors having quality health care or being able to afford their housing or having living wages or making sure that communities in the Upper Peninsula in northern Michigan aren't going to be dying because we're going to be losing our youth to other places, especially since we have such an abundance of natural beauty and natural resources in the Upper Peninsula. It should be, in the modern age where internet allows you to have more flexibility, we need to create the economic conditions for that flexibility.
So those 3 things are on your platform: healthcare, living wage, and jobs that will allow people to stay where they grew up and love.
I mean, my top 3 of this is Medicare for all, that we need to have a system that covers everybody and flattens the curve, that there should not be the same people in the same town working at the same jobs that have different healthcare circumstances, different costs, and different outcomes. We need to create a universal single-payer system. The United States of America is the only developed nation in the world that does not provide universal health care to its citizens. I think that should stop. That's number 1.
Hear, hear.
And number 2, I'm an architect. So housing people is deeply personally important to me. And what I try to explain to people is when you're going through school as an architect, it's so aspirational, it's so positive, it's so, you are imagining yourself much like aspiring teachers and aspiring doctors, that through your vocation, you are going to meaningfully improve people's lives, that you are going to create places that are going to allow the end users, the people that you're ultimately designing a building for, to live better lives. And every single day, I'm confronted by the limitations of my profession in being able to house people. That I can design $6 million homes with a bowling alley in the basement, but I can't house anybody within my own income bracket. That I can't make sure that people have quality, affordable housing. And I think the best way to do that is through public housing, the repealing of the Faircloth Amendment so that we can create quality, affordable public housing for everybody that needs it, decriminalizing homelessness, and making sure that private equity firms can't buy up single-family residences and really price us out of our own communities.
Oh my God, you just gave me goosebumps. and I wasn't going to swear today, but it calls for it. Fuck. I have had dozens of people sitting in that chair that you're in, and they talk, all of them talk about housing inequality and, access, and nobody has a solution. They all regurgitate, and I understand it, they regurgitate the ills of affordability and access. You just quantified what can be done to fix it. And no one has done that before. I think this is my come to Jesus moment. That's pretty amazing.
Well, I'm glad I could do that for you. Well, one thing I would say in general is that affordability is often treated as a general health condition of the government, and people attribute affordability to whether or not their folks are in power. And there's a certain amount of cope in terms of describing why it's actually acceptable that things are unaffordable under my administration versus the previous administration. But I think that what a lot of people are specifically loath to address in terms of affordability is people are afraid to challenge power. And ultimately, affordability comes back to one issue. We can talk about healthcare, we can talk about housing, we can talk about any number of issues. The income inequality, the way that our government handicaps things for the most wealthy and most powerful people, as if they're
I want you
immaterial.
to go into that. Wealth inequality and corruption are two of the top issues for Americans, nationwide. So please continue. Sorry to interrupt.
No, it's treated too often as if it is just those are billionaires and they earned their billions and it's completely detached from any of our conditions, right? And that any time that we try to address that disparity, which is growing every single year, it's treated as if the working class is jealous of the billionaire class. When the reality is the billionaire class, their very existence creates challenges in our lives here on the ground. That's bore out in the way that private equity is able to buy our homes. That's why our housing is unaffordable, right? It's the way that they manipulate our healthcare system to create a system that is built on profit rather than care. And we create a system where our wages are being suppressed for their profitability. And then what we create is a situation where layoffs and withholding of opportunities from the American working class creates internal wage competition. Basically, we're all fighting over less and less crumbs while their plates are full. Their plates are overflowing. And we need to address that.
Billionaire welfare.
Yes. And I hate to strike out and start to, punch above my weight class here. But recently, Alyssa Slotkin had made a comment about that she didn't believe that a corporation should receive corporate subsidies so long as their staff, their workers, do not make a living wage. And while that's admirable, I would say this, is that two things. They shouldn't have a choice to provide those staff members with less than a living wage. I think that a living wage should be the standard in America, and we should have universal paid time off. I think we should have universal paid parental leave and universal child care. And we need to expand Social Security so that we can have a dignified retirement as well. But we also should not be providing corporate subsidies to these billion-dollar companies who then turn around and spend it on corporate buyback or stock buybacks, right? And so we've
enriching
created this
themselves.
Exactly. So why have we normalized a system? Why have we normalized a system where we're providing corporate welfare for corporations that don't require that welfare? And why are we normalizing a system that victimizes the American working class by withholding a dignified existence from them?
And let's talk about, so that's the enrichment, the inequality. Let's talk about corruption. This system that we now live in so prevalently allows these billionaires and wannabe millionaires to buy our government, to buy favorable treatment. It's happening day in and day out in the Trump administration. They're all becoming enriched because they're getting the billions of dollars that we have paid on our backs from our hard work.
Yes.
And so they're using it to get favors, access, favorable laws and regulations and tax brackets, We're sick of it. If you are elected to Congress, do you think you're going to be able to stand up to that?
Hell yeah. Well, and it starts with how you get elected to Congress, right? Is our current representation, Jack Bergman, he's swimming in money from AIPAC. He's swimming in money from Boeing and Lockheed Martin and Raytheon. And so when you get to the appropriations bills, when you get to those budget bills, why are we shocked when our representation would rather give corporations tax breaks, would rather pump more and more money into the military industrial complex, even if it means withholding crucial services from people within their own district? We've created this feedback loop, and then we don't break it during our elections. And I think Democrats are equally guilty of this. I think the Democratic Party should be swearing off billionaire and corporate money.
Yes, absolutely.
You cannot start on a basis of dependency and then hope that when you get to Congress, you're going to then grow wings and do the things that your constituents need, especially when it comes to undermining your ability to become reelected. Right? I think that there is a tendency to believe that somebody is going to hold certain positions in their candidacy, and that once they win, they'll become all the things that we need them to be. And I don't think that's true.
Your website says you're 100% corruption free.
Yeah.
So that means you're not taking corporate PAC money.
Nope.
But you're not taking corporate dark money either?
No.
Because that's the money that we can't see.
No. All I'm going to be taking money from is if a union PAC wants to, because I believe that we need to grow the strength of our unions.
Yeah.
I believe that we need to pass the PRO Act. So if a union wants to back me with some money, I will accept that union's money because we are ideologically aligned. That I believe that is on message and that is on course to the things that I want to do for my constituents, right? I'm not going to take any money from corporations. I'm not going to take any money from AIPAC or a pro-Israel lobby, because I believe that I believe that American dollars should stay in America for the most part. And two, I don't believe that we should be subsidizing a genocide in Gaza. I'm going to be entirely funded by small individual donations. And that's the way I think that we have to get to Congress. And I think the other thing about say campaign finance is that we need to normalize winning with less. That's the way that we scale this to districts throughout the country, is that you cannot expect that every single candidate that is fighting for you is also going to matriculate to the top of the fundraising bracket. That you need to be able to do more with less resources because functionally you are guaranteeing that you are going to have less resources. So we need to get scrappy. And I think that the way you do that is you simply believe aloud. You say the things that you know will help your constituents, and you just believe those with enough conviction to convince your neighbors.
With money out of politics, which I hope someday I'm still alive to see, you raise people, not money.
Hell yeah.
Because even when we get someone in office, whether they're Republican or Democrat, people don't realize, and I know this for a fact, they spend several days a week fundraising the day they get in office for the next cycle. I don't really care about job security for my elected officials. I want to see the results of my taxpayer dollars.
Yeah.
Is that crazy? Am I
No.
living in a dream?
No, and what the system leverages is the system leverages your distrust of the system, right? The system relies on you accepting less from your government. And it tells you, we often put it this way is if everybody just voted for the things that they truly believed would help them, then whether it's in a single election cycle or multiple election cycles, that at some point you are going to end up with better candidates and better outcomes on the back end of it. But so many times during a candidacy, you're trying to triangulate to where you think your constituents are in that moment. Not trying to improve their lives. You're trying to guess at where they are based on a recent election outcome or a recent poll.
Or your donors, your big donors.
Or your donors. And I think those things tend to be aligned, is that your donors are aligned with the outcomes that you've experienced. And there's an inertia there, right? There's this idea of a consensus government where you will not be an effective lawmaker so long as you are an outlier among the people that are in Congress right now, right? And I say that is a horrible, horrible way of approaching politics if politics is meant to improve people's lives. And so what I think people do too often is that they will they will try to guess at what is popular and accept injustice along the way. When I believe that the job of a politician, and I don't like to call myself a politician, no politician really does, but since we're here having a conversation we otherwise wouldn't have, I'd usually
I
be
think
up
Lindsey
and
Graham loves to call himself a politician,
maybe
especially late
yeah.
at night when he's,
yeah.
doing whatever he does.
Yes. No, I would agree with you there. But I think the job of a politician should be to set their North Star at justice, should be to set their North Star at improving the lives of their constituents, improving the lives of their neighbors, the people that they live with, the people that they go to the same churches with, work the same jobs, shop the same stores with. Improve their lives, set your North Star there, and then work to make that popular rather than doing the other way around.
On that note, let's talk about the Democratic establishment, which I think a lot of us believe has largely failed to meet the moment. ICE, immigration, Epstein, foreign policy, all these things. Where is leadership? We see it peek its head up here and there with certain elected officials, but overall, as our party, what's going on?
I think it's safe to say that the Citizens United decision has played a big role in that. We were talking about campaign finance. You cannot expect that you are going to pump functionally infinite money into a bad outcome and then be able to change that outcome. And I think that outcome is reflected in people like Hakeem Jeffries and in people like Chuck Schumer, that there is an inertia to our government, that there are levers of power that are held away from the people that would be best suited to hold those levers of power. And that there is this general capitulation to those bad actors. And what we're seeing right now with ICE in particular is that instead of standing up and saying this is ridiculous, that this is a gross waste of resources, that this is a gross infringement on our due process rights as U.S. citizens, and a betrayal of even people going through legal immigration proceedings, instead of calling it what it is, and I call it what it is, I say that what we are doing is we are paving the path for authoritarianism under the pretext of what I see as an immigration hysteria. Right? We make immigration seem like it is the root cause of all of the problems that we have in this country, when every single data point, from crime rates to economic outcomes, economic impact, shows us that immigration has always been a strength in this country. And instead, what we did is post 9/11, we have created this security theater where we moved immigration proceedings outside of the Department of Justice and into the hastily constructed Department of Homeland Security. And so now we went from a process that was about vetting future citizens, right? Looking at them as an economic and a cultural benefit, and then making sure that they were able to come through that process safely. And now we have made it one of paranoia. Now we have made it one of otherizing people and treating them as if they are villains for coming and seeking the things that our grandparents and great-grandparents pursued here in America. And I think that we need to reject that wholeheartedly. So why is the Democratic Party participating in this legitimizing of the system as it exists right now? And why are they rolling over when we see that ICE agents are walking through our streets with masks and brutalizing U.S. citizens and our immigrant neighbors? Why are we rolling over when we see how it is weaponized for political means by the Trump administration? And to my Republican voting brothers and sisters, you've created an army that I think right now, in terms of funding, ranks something like 16th in the world in terms of its funding.
Incredible. Is that true?
And you have provided that to the executive branch with seemingly no checks and balances.
Right.
And so if you're a Republican and you like the way things are right now, imagine if a Democrat is in there. Imagine if a Democrat decides to deploy that army in a way that you disagree with.
Right.
And all of this is built around this imagining that immigrants are creating crime, having a crime wave of rape and murder, or that they are a drain on our national resources, even though our funding resources, even though every single study proves the otherwise, that they are actually providing a tax surplus rather than a tax deficit. And they have provided about a third of savings against our national debt. And so we're continuing to legitimize this farce. And in the meantime, we are undermining our own liberties. And so when I see Chuck Schumer say, we're going to give ICE more funding as long as they don't wear masks. Some of the times. I mean, they can wear masks some of the times if they think that you're a terrorist,
I know,
right?
we're idiots. Like, oh, thank you, Uncle Chuck. Thank you for standing up for us. Go back in your bedroom now.
Yeah. And so why do so many Democrats accept that?
I don't know.
Because Chuck Schumer could be replaced. To my knowledge, that Chuck Schumer, if a single member of Congress or of the Democratic caucus in the Senate decided that they were going to question Chuck Schumer's role as the minority leader, that they could have a vote of their caucus and with a majority vote they could vote him out. Why haven't they?
That's the big question.
Because the American public has all seen the same thing.
Yeah.
We all see an ineffectual leader who is not equipped for this moment.
Right.
So why are we allowing him to lead us to ruin?
Right. It's trickling down to us in a negative way,
Absolutely.
keeping him there. All right. If you are elected, would you support impeachment and removal of any current administration officials? And if yes, whom?
I mean, it's almost tough to say who you wouldn't, right? I mean, based on conventional norms, let's say that. I was saying to someone the other day is they had brought up Watergate, right, with Nixon. And I had said to them, they had made a comment like, oh man, if Watergate happened today, I don't know how it would be covered and this, that, and the other thing. And I said, honestly, Watergate would probably not move the needle. I don't know, it would make it the 6th page in the newspaper these days because of how insane things have gotten with rank and naked corruption. And then when you throw the things like Epstein files out, right? You throw Pam Bondi's hiding of that situation and Kash Patel and others. When you look at the way Kristi Noem is running the Department of Homeland Security, it's difficult to say that there isn't rank criminality and unconstitutionality at every single layer of the Trump administration, right?
Yeah, just think about the ones we don't know about.
Exactly.
Holy
That's
cow.
the stuff that we confront every single day. But I will also say this, is that I would absolutely support impeachment of any number of individuals, but I almost want to take everything back to affordability, right? I want to take things back because so much of this can be hand waved away as a partisan hysteria, especially among my Republican voting brothers and sisters in the Upper Peninsula in Northern Michigan, right? They look at it and they'll go, I don't want them to write me off and say, I'm not going to vote for him because he's just a crazy lib who's going to, he's going to go after Trump and they're going to try to impeach him again and witch hunt. What I want them to hear coming out of my mouth more than anything is that I believe that they deserve better from their government, and I think that better is possible. Better is possible from your government as long as you start to expect better. And that means better outcomes in your healthcare, your housing, and your general affordability and quality of life.
It all sounds good. All right, let's lighten it up a little.
Hell yeah.
Okay. What will you do if elected to make sure that the Lions make it to the Super Bowl in my lifetime?
Sure. Yeah. No.
And I don't have much lifetime left.
Oh, come on. Give yourself some credit there. I'm a long-suffering Lions fan, just like so many down here. In fact, it's probably worse for me in the Upper Peninsula because I live alongside the Wisconsin border. And the majority of the people in Dickinson County where I'm from, they're all Green Bay Packer fans. My parents are Green Bay Packer fans. My grandparents, everybody, all my friends are Green Bay Packer fans, right? And so, maybe it's because of Barry Sanders. Maybe it's because they made it to the NFC Championship game in 1992. Maybe it's because I'm a contrarian at heart. Any number of those reasons. I became a diehard Lions fan, and diehard. I really mean it, because in a sea of Green Bay Packer fans, watching them win Super Bowls and have all the success that they had over the course of my lifetime, I stuck with my Lions, and they've given us some recent success.
Do you feel like a stepchild?
I do.
Yeah.
I do. And, and what really broke my heart recently is my kids, I have twin boys. They're getting to be about the age where you decide what your team allegiance is. My son, August, he said, Dad, I'm with you. I'm a Lions fan. Great. Awesome. Abe's got too much of me in him, I think. He's a contrarian and he's a Packer fan. And so I have a Packer fan in my home, And I'm experiencing, I suppose, a version of what my parents dealt with, is that they were Green Bay Packer fans and they had the redhead stepchild, so to speak, the Lions fan in their house. And now I have my son Abel, who's a Packers fan, and we'll make through it. But I don't know how much control I have over the Lions' ability to win the Super Bowl, but I hope it happens in my lifetime too.
Well, at least you're honest.
Yeah.
What's the biggest difference between the UP and the LP?
I think that there are some cultural differences. I think it comes from being in a deeply rural area where you're used to. I mean, we had a hell of a backyard, in general for all Upers, right? Is that the abundance of the forests and the freshwater coastlines and all those things that make our environment up there so beautiful. For the most part, every family or somewhere in your extended family, you have a hunting camp, right? It's just a lodge in the woods, and it varies in terms of how much electricity or running water you have, right? But that's where you spent most of your childhood. You spent most of your childhood running around the woods with your friends and your grandparents. And I think that it has created a great deal of connection, both with nature, but also with your family unit. And I think that there's a level of community that I think, maybe I hopefully believe, transcends partisanship, that we all are friends. Most of my friends in Iron Mountain are Republicans, and we still get along as famously as we ever did.
That's beautiful.
And what I would say is this, is that for all the things that might separate or might be differences or contrasts between the Upper Peninsula and the Lower Peninsula, I see so much more in terms of commonalities that even down here in Detroit, that you talk to folks and it's just good folks all around. And I think that we need to just stop looking at stop looking for differences when most of the time there aren't, not even there, right?
Well, Kyle Blomquist, I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for being here today on For the Sake of the Argument and telling us a little bit about you and what you stand for. And good luck.
Thank you so much. This was really wonderful. It was great talking to you.